It's a mock that will make you do a double take. Mel Kiper has a handful of surprises, and we're 5 weeks away from the NFL draft in Green Bay. Welcome to Mel Kiper's Mock Draft Special 3.0. Field Yates is here, Adam Schefter is there, and the Godfather, we heard Field talk about it, of the NFL draft, that is Mel Kiper Jr. right there, and cannot wait to get his thoughts. Are you ready to go, Mel? Because there's no real surprise at number one. The Titans are on the clock. Where do they go?
They go with Cam Ward. What does Brian Callahan do? Head coach handpick his quarterback. He inherited Will Levis. Will Levis has to progress. You need top level play at quarterback, and Cam Ward with the explosive arm talent is the reason why I think he goes number one overall to the Tennessee Titans. The arm angles, mobility. He cut down on the sacks this year from what it was at Washington State over a 2-year period. Accuracy never waned. He was at 67% at Washington State, 67% at Miami. 39 touchdowns, up from 25, only 7 picks. Now, careless and reckless at times. He'll put the ball in harm's way still, despite those interceptions. He needs to work on that. That's what hurt Levis and Callahan last year when they were together. So for Cam Ward, though, like I say, the arm talent, the mobility, and that potential because of that at the pro level is the reason why I think Brian Callahan handpicks a quarterback that if he loves him, you take him number one. If he doesn't, then you maybe trade down or you take an Abdul Carter. But if you're looking at a quarterback with a skill set that's going to be tough to pass up for Tennessee and Brian Callahan at the number one overall spot, it would be Cam Ward, quarterback.
This would put the Browns into a pretty interesting position.
Days away from this draft in Green Bay. It seems very quiet with that number one pick. What are you hearing about the Titans and their plans?
Well, Kevin, keep in mind, every team has its initial first-round draft pick in this draft. We haven't seen any teams move off their first-round picks. Now, Tennessee, I'm sure, is going to listen to aggressive offers from teams trying to get up to number one. But right now, if we follow the breadcrumbs, they point to Tennessee holding that pick and taking the quarterback Cam Ward from Miami. Look at what they did in free agency. The only quarterback they signed was Brandon Allen. Not very experienced, not very productive at the NFL level. Look at the offensive lineman they signed. They signed a left tackle, Dan Moore, that will allow them to move last year's first-round draft pick, J.C. Latham, over to right tackle, and they also added the veteran guard, Kevin Zeitler. So 2 big offensive line additions that necessitate 3 changes on the offensive line, building up to take a quarterback. That's certainly what it seems like, and Cam Ward right now is tracking to be the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft.
Yeah, and Kevin, probably the only reason why there is this much ambiguity about the pick.
What do you guys think of that? Abdul Carter, not the number one pick?
2024 draft class, where we had 3 players, Caleb Williams, and then Jaden Daniels, and then Drake May, who I guarantee you, if any of them were in this year's class, we'd be saying lock number 1 overall pick. So just how good of a prospect is Cam Ward? I've got him 7th overall on my big board. I think he is a justifiable number 1 overall pick because of the circumstances that both Adam and Mel reference. On top of that, this guy did show this past year that by far he is the best innovator of any quarterback in this class. The offensive line in Tennessee has made real strides, as Schefter just alluded to. That being said, Cam Ward proved this past year that it doesn't have to be perfect for him to succeed and thrive. He is the best second reaction quarterback in this entire year's class, no matter how good the offensive line is anywhere a rookie quarterback goes. Because of the natural growing pains that a rookie quarterback is going to experience, the ability to make things happen on the go will bode very well for Cam Ward, who certainly looks like the centerpiece of Tennessee's offense going forward.
There's a veteran experience that he brought to Miami. You saw it in the pocket, always calm. The Titans have taken 6 first-round quarterbacks in the common draft era, tied for the 3rd most in the NFL. Speaking of quarterback turnover, the Browns. They need a quarterback, and after locking up Myles Garrett, Mel, what do they do at number 2 here?
Hey, I would take Shedeur Sanders, but this is a mock draft. This is what we think they will do, and that would be Abdul Carter to put opposite Myles Garrett. They haven't had that ability to come off the edge from both sides, and Abdul Carter unleashed off the edge this year after playing off ball. Went from 48 tackles to 68, 6 tackles for loss to 24, and 4.5 sacks to 12 sacks. Had 5 forced fumbles during his career at Penn State. A kid who plays the run well, seals the edge. But that ability to finish and close, when you got Garrett One of the best all time coming off the edge. Now you put Garrett, a guy like Carter opposite Garrett. You got something going there. You got to beat these quarterbacks. You don't have to just get your quarterback, but you got to stop and contain these other great quarterbacks in the AFC. And you got Lamar. You got to chase him down. You got Joe Burrow. You got to contain him. Abdul Carter with Garrett. Are you kidding me? A quarterback's going to have to bring it that day, and that offensive line better be ready. And that quarterback better be ready to get hit when Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett are coming after you. So I think if you look at it, you love to have Hunter. Do it all player, both sides of the ball, but Carter for them, I think, makes the most sense.
Shefty, so
yeah, and if you can't get a quarterback for the Browns, if you can't get Cam Ward, just take Abdul Carter, tank this year.
Boatload of picks, they do the reset, and then you get Abdul Carter sliding right in, Carter right into that spot. Yeah. What are you hearing about the Browns now? Now that they signed Myles Garrett to this long-term deal, they give him a boatload of money, and they still need a quarterback. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, here's the thing to remember going into the number 2 overall pick in this draft. The Browns' general manager, Andrew Berry, has spent a lot of time on Shedeur Sanders. There's been a lot of contact there. There's been a lot of digging there. Now, we'll see what that equates to on draft night and whether or not the Browns are willing to go in the direction of quarterback. I heard Mel give them Abdul Carter. There also seems to be the sentiment out there that the Browns love Travis Hunter. And I don't think it would be a surprise to see them go with another type of weapon like Travis Hunter at the number 2 spot. This obviously will become the first interesting spot in the draft, putting a lot of time into Shedeur Sanders when we know that the highest graded players in this draft are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus on those 2 prospects for right now because it sounds like if they were going to take a quarterback, we'd have a much better feel for that reality. If you're trying to break the tie between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, and both Mel and I, by the way, have Travis as the number 1 prospect on each of our big boards, I think it comes down to this. I think the grades are going to be very similar for those 2 players, Kevin, on basically every team's board. We just talked about that Myles Garrett extension. Myles Garrett is now the highest paid defensive player in the history of the NFL. What's his job? To rush the passer. What's the job going to be for Abdul Carter? To rush the passer. The Browns may just say that an elite Pro Bowl or even all-pro caliber pass rusher has more value in a vacuum than an elite Pro Bowl, all-pro cornerback, which is what they may view Travis Hunter as, or a wide receiver. So I don't have a strong take.
If I was the Browns, I'm just taking Abdul Carter. This isn't that hard, to be honest.
I'm a Travis Hunter guy personally, but Abdul Carter is so special that I would not begrudge the Browns at all for using the number 2 overall pick on him.
Yeah, you look back, when you look at Abdul Carter's skill set, too. When we look forward, I should say, in the next 3 to 5 years, he could be the best player in this draft.
Yep.
With the measurables and all the things he brings. All right, so we're continuing the mock here specifically. So the Giants on the board looking for a quarterback. Mel, what do they do?
It's either Shedeur or Russell Wilson, I guess.
Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, Colorado. I love Shedeur. He's been my QB1 all year. And going back to last year, I was talking about how good he could be. And the offensive line helped him a little bit this year. Cut down on his sacks, which he needs to do moving forward. Get that ball out maybe a tick faster. But you talk about dealing with NFL conditions in that pocket. He did that. Now, he took so many hits. How he survived, I don't know. The accuracy was amazing. 74% this past year. 69% the previous year when he was getting hit all over the place. 72 touchdowns, 13 interceptions career-wise. And you think about what he was able to do from a consistency standpoint. 11 of 13 games this past year, he's at 70% or higher. That's tough to do against air. The 2 games he was at 61%. Yeah. Going back to last year when he was getting hit, they couldn't block him, right? Lowest completion percentage in any game was 60% for Shedeur Sanders. That, my friends, is accuracy, consistency, and being able to manipulate the pocket somehow, some way, get the ball to your receivers and get it there accurately. This notion 4.8s is slow. Guess what? 4.8s isn't. Patrick Mahomes was 4.8, 4.84 in the 40. Matt Ryan was 4.9 plus. Tom Brady was 5.24. So for me, Adam, the big stage, the bright lights, the pressure, the expectation, Shedeur, like no other, I think can deal with that very effectively.
Well, Mel, let's go back to last year for a moment. The Giants tried desperately to get up to number 3 to see if they could go get Drake May, and they could not get the trade done with the New England Patriots. Here they are this year sitting at number 3. And we've already known that they've poured an awful lot of time and energy into the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft. Don't we remember at one point in time Shedeur having a pair of New York Giant cleats? Couldn't we see Shedeur in the bright lights and big city of the Big Apple walking around?
Yeah, he had the Giants cleats, I think, before the bowl game.
There are some teams that believe that Shedeur doesn't belong up in this spot. Yep. But you mentioned, Mel, he was your #1 quarterback throughout the course of the year. And there might not be a team out there that's any more desperate for a quarterback than the New York Giants, who have to worry about Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels and Dak Prescott in their own division. They could go with another player, but at some point in time, you need to address the quarterback position. You can't wait for a free agent quarterback to come out of his darkness retreat to save the franchise. You can't count on Russell Wilson to come out of Pittsburgh and bring life to the franchise. You've got to find a quarterback of the future, and we'll see where they settle in on Shedeur Sanders. But this is a pick that would seem to make a lot of sense at this spot.
Yeah, Schefter sounds like he's over Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think everybody is. But.
So in a vacuum, of course, would I like to grab a player who's rated closer to #1, like Travis Hunter in this scenario? Yes. But circumstances, for now, drive this selection. If you don't take Shedeur Sanders, what exactly is the lifeline that you, as a head coach and a general manager, have beyond the 2025 season? This just in. If you have some average veteran quarterback with this roster in that division, you're not making a real push this year. Last time I checked, the Philadelphia Eagles played in the Super Bowl and wrecked the Chiefs. I know Kevin loves that memory right there.
Love that.
The game before that, the NFC Championship game, they wrecked the
7 rushing touchdowns in that game.
Maybe the 4 best teams going into next year already in this division. You have to give yourself a chance with the quarterback. That's why I believe, absent some sort of significant personnel change at quarterback, that right now I don't foresee for the Giants, I expect them to be very much in the market at #3 with Shedeur Sanders as the most obvious target.
Yeah, and this notion about Shedeur Sanders, he's going to bring this circus atmosphere and all these distractions, that's completely inaccurate. Shedeur Sanders isn't about that. Deion Sanders wasn't about that. You know, about preparation, work ethic, passion for the game, love of the game, doing everything the right way and being respected by everybody in that building and doing it exactly that same way when he was with the Atlanta Braves as well in Major League Baseball, revered as a teammate. To me, Shedeur Sanders is exactly like his dad, like his father, and he has that same mindset, that demeanor. So this notion about all that other stuff away from the game is going to really hurt your franchise, affect your franchise in a negative way is all a bunch of BS. It's not true. Shedeur Sanders will be a great leader. He will galvanize, and he will be the face of the franchise. And that's the New York Giants, just like Eli was with Archie, showing him the way. Same thing with Deion and Shedeur Sanders with the New York Giants. I think it's a great fit.
I'm really glad you brought all that up, because if you watch Colorado, what he did in that offense the last 2 years and getting back up sack after sack and making the big throw, there's a reason why he was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. So well said by you, Mel. All right, now, the last time the Giants used a top 5 pick, keep in mind on a quarterback, it was Phillip Rivers, who was then traded to the Chargers for Eli Manning. I cannot believe that was nearly 2 decades ago.
Coming up, see 2 running backs in this mock. Oh, my. Welcome back to Mel Kiper's Mock Draft 3.0. Patriots are now on the clock. Mel with the 4th pick. The way things are shaking out with your mock, they may be high-fiving. Why?
We just get Travis Hunter.
Whoa, I'll tell you what, Josh Allen and 2 of the other quarterbacks from the AFC say this guy can pick our pocket, or Drake May sitting there saying, hey, what a happy day it is for Drake, right? You look about a receiver, corner.
I hope we play him at receiver. We got Christian Gonzalez, one of the best in the league.
To be able to perform at the level he did, playing on both sides of the ball, and during that kind of punishment, and taking those hits as a receiver, delivering hits as a corner, tackling and doing all that, and so worrying about how many players are on the field. When I saw him counting this year, how many players are on the field, this kid is special. And for Drake May, needing help at that spot, a game breaker, a touchdown waiting to happen type player like Travis Hunter is, and you can sprinkle him in a little bit on the defensive side of the ball in the big games in the playoffs, boy, the New England Patriot fans will love having Travis Hunter on
Mel's already got us in the playoffs.
Drake May will love having a weapon of his capability.
Yeah, you know, Mel, typically I leave the exclusive information on this show to Adam Schefter, but I've obtained something exclusively here on the Mock Draft Special. This right here is the card. The Patriots will submit if the draft falls as it does right now. I have maybe the worst recreation of the Patriots logo right here.
Great logo.
But it says Travis Hunter, because if the board falls this way, the Patriots will sprint faster than Travis Hunter runs a 40 to make this selection. It would be a dream scenario for a team who a reminder, had that first overall pick all but locked up until week 18 of this past regular season. I think that Travis Hunter has capabilities to play on both sides of the ball. Worth noting for New England, a team that is desperate for a difference maker on offense.
And Mel, specifically now, whoever drafts the Heisman winner will likely give, Hunter every chance to succeed on both sides of the ball. However, which position do you think the Patriots would hope Hunter sticks at, as Field gave us the idea that they do have some talent in that secondary?
Yeah, I think that's where you sprinkle them in. You can never have enough good cover men. Two isn't enough in this league, right? So you need multiple cover men. Travis Hunter is phenomenal. Reading the quarterback, breaking on the ball, great anticipation ability. And you think about him as a receiver for Drake May. That's what they really need desperately there. But Travis Hunter is a guy. He is explosive out of his break. His hand-eye coordination, his ball skills are unbelievable. Probably the best I've seen of any player I've evaluated in 47 years in that area. So when you got a special talent, you let him play it out. Where's he going to be great? He can be great at both spots. He could be really good at one and great at the other. But I do think for New England, wide receiver initially, like I say, when they get good enough to become playoff caliber, then you can sprinkle them in the secondary and pick your spots on that side of the ball.
Yeah, when you have a young quarterback, there is a responsibility to do everything in your power to surround that player with the requisite pieces to be successful. Drake May clearly has enough talent to be a very, very successful quarterback in the NFL. Quiet free agency period for the Patriots, though, on offense. A lot of the pains, the concerns that Patriots fans have right now would be gone if Travis Hunter falls to this team at number 4 overall. I really believe that the highest end outcome for Travis Hunter, if he plays just one side of the ball, the other, is at wide receiver. I think it's all pro good. The ball skills that Mel mentioned, terrific.
I agree.
The run after catch stuff and the instincts, I think, are elite. Travis Hunter, I get it, has aspirations to play on both sides of the ball. But if he has to play on just one side, and I'm okay with him playing both, settling in as just a wide receiver for this Patriots team would still be a dream scenario.
Yeah, it would be fantastic.
The only question is, do we let him wear number 12?
Patriots are in the midst of their longest playoff drought since 1993. That's the year before Robert Kraft.
It's all right.
took
Drake
over.
May
All
will
right,
be
we've got
fixing
4
that
picks
soon.
in with this mock. Let's go get to 5 and 6 here. And Mel, let's start with the Jaguars at 5. Who do you got?
Yeah, we've been locked in. I think everybody has, Fielding and I. When Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's certainly a neat area. Mason Graham is probably one of the safer picks you'll ever find because he is a guy, wrestler mentality, brings it every week. And you talk about the ability to be in that backfield wreaking havoc. That's a nightmare of any quarterback. So we always talk about the edge rushers being so valuable. It's those up-the-gut guys. And Mason Graham for Jacksonville, if Mason Smith develops as well, then you got something going here. They got guys off the edge. Walker's really come on. So for me, that makes sense. Then you go to the Raiders. The late great Al Davis was there. One of the best football men in NFL history, Al Davis was. Maybe with that 4-2-9, it would have been Matthew Golden as a shocking early first-round pick out of Texas. But I'm going to go Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. Pete Carroll wants to run the football. You got now the quarterback he wanted, and Geno Smith bringing back with Pete Carroll, and now Jeanty. We talk about contact balance. Game breaker supreme, can catch the ball in that backfield. We'll throw that 5'7" and change frame around as a blocker and get the job done in that area. So running the football, complement your quarterback, Ashton Jeanty. And hey, I know my philosophy.
I'm sorry, I like Ashton Jeanty and everything, but at 6, come on.
People are jumping on that bandwagon.
Come on,
but
Raiders.
This is a mock draft about what they will do, not what I would do. He's rated as a top 5 guy. I believe you have him in your top 5 overall. So you can't say it's a reach, right? Based on ability. And we grade players on ability. We don't grade them on philosophy. That's why Ashton Jeanty here, I think. And by the way, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina is right there as almost running back 1A. So, but I do think Jeanty for the Raiders would be a pick that I don't think would surprise anybody at this point.
Yeah, I'm not as convicted on Jeanty and Hampton being the exact same tier. I do think that Jeanty is in a tier unto himself amongst the running backs in this year's class. He's the 4th highest rated player on my board. I consider there to be 4. He led the entire country in. On top of that, take a look at the Raiders depth chart right now at running back. We talked about the breadcrumbs Shefty did for the Tennessee Titans at quarterback. How about the Raiders right now? Is there anybody on that roster you can say to yourself, Zamir White or Raheem Mostert, that guy is unequivocally the answer to be the bell cow for a Pete Carroll offense? My answer would be no. It is a deep running back class. That is to be clear. I don't think any player in the entire class has a clearer path to becoming a Pro Bowler as a rookie than Ashton Jeanty does. He is that special at a position where we have seen plenty of guys make a smooth transition.
And they nailed last year's first-round pick in Brock Bowers, right? Yeah. So, hey, listen, we've got phones ringing.
The Titans calling Shefty right now to say, here's what we're taking number 1 overall.
We'll find out if Shefty has any draft news for us as we continue here. That's a tease. It's in Green Bay. The 3-day event begins Thursday, April 24th. We'll have every pick once again on ESPN, along with our usual expert analysis, also available on the NFL Network. And as always, ABC's coverage focuses on the prospect's journey to the draft. And we're back here with Mel Kiper's Mock Draft 3.0. And the Jets are on the clock at 7 with their new head coach, Aaron Glenn. Mel, what do they do there?
Well, he passed on Brock Bowers last year, tight end out of Georgia. Now you go back to Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. I know Young Fielding would say maybe Armand Membu, offensive tackle out of Missouri. But Tyler Warren, that creative piece, if you get this chess piece and you can use them in all those different ways. He can be in the backfield running the football, H-back, move tight end, put him wide. The ability to make those contested catches. Saw him catch a ball off Lathan Ransom, safety, Ohio State's shoulders. See him here with the ball in his hands. He is a dynamic performer with Justin Fields and his dual threat ability. Now you have a guy with the versatility of Tyler Warren. Boy, would that be a heck of an addition to the Jets offense. Jalen Walker I've had there on Mock 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, all to the Carolina Panthers. When you put on a tape, the Georgia Bulldogs defense, who was the best player, wasn't Michael Williams or Malachi Starks. It was number 11, Jalen Walker. He showed up big each and every week, off-ball, edge, tackling in the open field, getting after the quarterback, sideline to sideline plays. Jalen Walker, a baller, a guy gets after it, play in and play out, and brings a lot of versatility to that Carolina Panther defense.
He was a star.
I think that'd be a low-key great pick if Carolina got him at 8.
Defense, no doubt about it. All right, the Saints are now on the clock with new head coach Kellen Moore. You think he goes bold here at number 9, Mel? What do you have?
Kellen Moore, former quarterback, new head coach with the New Orleans Saints. You handpick and you bring in my quarterback. And we talked about Bo Nix, and Sean Payton made sense last year because he saw a little Drew Brees and Bo Nix. If Kellen Moore loves Jackson Dart, you take him at 9. You're in the division with former number 1 picks Baker Mayfield, the emerging Bryce Young. Michael Penix passes. He was up from 65% the previous year. Only 6 interceptions. He was at 11 interceptions back in 2022. 1,500 rushing yards the last 3 years at Ole Miss. This kid can beat a defense.
You guys are going to love this in the comments. Jackson Dart, top 10 pick now.
The RPO offense will have to adjust to going into the NFL, away from that as a full-time thing, full-time deal, and then also layering the football. So all young quarterbacks need to work on. He'll do that. Jackson Dart with Carr there, the veteran. He will be the bridge. Jackson Dart, to me, if Kellen Moore loves him, you don't worry about where he's rated in mocks or in ratings boards around the internet. You take him at pick number 9 if Kellen Moore loves him.
This is what we talk about. You have the big board, and then you have the mock, and the quarterback is evaluated completely differently, and this is a big decision, a surprise for many here. Shefty, he brought up Derek Carr. What's the future like with Derek Carr right now in New Orleans?
What about Spencer Rattler, too?
Well, they just reworked his contract just recently. And again, that's going to be a question next year, just as it was this year. You heard Derek Carr making noise about getting out of New Orleans, exploring other opportunities, teams allegedly being interested in his services. If that came up this year, before he even played for new head coach Kellen Moore, certainly that could be a carryover issue for next year. And that's why it would not be a surprise to see a team like the New Orleans Saints look for a quarterback in this particular draft. Now, I don't know that it's going to be with the first-round draft pick. It'll depend on how the board matches up to the value that they have on each player. But clearly, they're going to look to address the quarterback position at some point in time. The question is how early in the draft, with the lingering questions that have existed in New Orleans surrounding Derek Carr.
Yeah, if I were GM Mickey Loomis, I would not take Jackson Dart number 9 overall. And I don't think Mel, by the way, would do the same thing, because I think Mel and I are in agreement that while Jackson Dart is quarterback 3, I'd be much more comfortable taking him either late 1 or early 2 as opposed to number 9 overall. But just because you see almost every single year, sometimes it's guys going into the top 10 like last year that we didn't think were necessarily locks to get there, or in the top 12 in the case of Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy. Sometimes it's quarterbacks just rising up very high into the draft. We always think back to the days where you saw quarterbacks like Jake Locker going in the top 8 overall selections. I don't feel strongly enough that if it were me making the decision, I would do it. But if you're New Orleans and you need a young quarterback that you believe in the pipeline, What else are you looking for? We know this team is always going to be operating with a small budget in free agency because they kick the can so frequently on their contracts. It may not be the perfect option, but it may be your best option if you are dead set on getting a quarterback.
In these mock drafts, it's almost like if you have any chance of being a first-round pick quarterback, you just get put in the top 10. Like, because of that fifth-year option on your contract and stuff, they just all get moved way up the board, whether they deserve it or not.
And then Jalen Milroe right
Yeah,
there
people
at
forgetting about Milroe.
So, Mel, is Jackson
All
Dart
these
a
guys.
tier of his own there at quarterback 3? Because you got Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders in one tier. Where do you have Jackson Dart? A separate tier?
Exactly. It's really, to me, it's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, then Jackson Dart, then everybody else. And I would say Tyler Shuck's red hot right now because of the Senior Bowl practices and obviously the Combine. Will Howard, the kind of year he had leading Ohio State Buckeyes to a national title. Kyle McCord left Ohio State, did a great job at Syracuse. Jalen Milroe, inconsistent but talented. And you also have Dylan Gabriel, doesn't have the ideal size, the big-time arm, but all he does is make accurate throws and throw with anticipation. Quinn Ewers, Curtis Rourke, because of the injury at Indiana, is down a little bit. Riley Leonard, for the right team, could be a fit maybe in the 4th, 5th round. So a lot of quarterbacks in that next tier vying for QB 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But to me, Jackson Dart is solidly QB 3. And to Fields' point about value, we were having the same argument, same conversation last year about Bo Nix in mock 3.0 I had going to Denver. And everybody after I did it said, it's too high. You can't take him that high. But Sean Payton saw a little Drew Brees in him. That's why I had said when I did 3.0, I got away from it in 4.0. I got talked out of it. I am not getting talked out of Jackson Dart to New Orleans at 9.
Well, I had him at 21 in my last mock draft, and you guys all came up to me and said I was nuts. But by the way, Mel, as usual, spending too much time on Twitter listening to what the egg handles have to say about his mock drafts. What I will say about this is in this mock draft, there is no trade. There were no trades in this mock draft. I think maybe New Orleans would prefer, if they're going to take Jackson Dart, to move down the board a little bit. But are we sure they're going to find a trade partner to move down? Because the risk in waiting on somebody like Jackson Dart is that he is not going to be there when the Saints pick in the second round.
That's baloney, Field.
Yeah. What's part's baloney? He's not going to be there in the second round.
That's baloney. What you were just saying is baloney. You don't trade down if you love a quarterback. You can't lose Jackson Dart.
It may be in a
you got to
perfect
stay where
world.
you love him.
Yeah.
You stay. You don't think about moving down and losing a guy you think can be your guy, just like Sean Payton thought Bo Nix could be his guy. So moving down to me and taking Jackson Dart and then potentially losing him to maybe the L.A. Rams moving up to get him or your Steelers moving up to get him, okay, where you had him going into one mock, would make absolutely no sense to me.
Jeff T?
Hey, Mel, last year, Denver debated moving back a few slots, getting an extra 2nd or 3rd round pick, and taking Bo Nix there. But then, when the run on quarterbacks came, they got a little nervous, a little uneasy, and they stayed right where they were. In fact, I think they might have moved up one slot after they considered moving back. So I know you're saying a team can't move back, but that's the exact scenario that the Broncos considered last year, moving back a little bit, getting an extra draft pick, and still getting Bo Nix. So who knows? Maybe New Orleans or another team does something similar this year with Jackson Dart.
And you know why it all changed? Because
How would
the
that extra
Falcons
pick have looked if they'd have lost Bo Nix?
Well, it all changed because the Falcons surprised everybody taking Michael Penix Jr., right? Then the approach changes from there on out, where teams like the Broncos and Raiders are like, oh no.
Hey guys, if Louis Riddick's right, maybe Tyler Shuck jumps in there because Louis Riddick loves Tyler Shuck, and I can speak for Louis and say he is big on Tyler Shuck, quarterback out of Louisville.
I think Shefty's a brilliant guy, just for the record. Shefty's got incredible insights. He makes great points.
Let me tell you, the next 37 days are going to be very entertaining with all of these conversations of quarterbacks moving up. Let's take a look at the next 3 picks here, Mel. And the Bears under new head coach Ben Johnson, they've been very active in free agency, handful of moves on the offensive line. What do they do at number 10?
Michael Williams, I talked about him with Jalen Walker. Why wasn't he the best player on their defense? Because he was injured. He got hurt early on with the ankle. He still had some production, but needs a more of a repertoire of moves getting after the quarterback. But and I've told Fielding this for months, he's an LTPer. He looks the part, and he certainly does. Bears need in this draft. They improved the offensive line along the interior. Now they get the edge rusher. Armand Membo, one of the more red-hot prospects in this draft right now in real time, goes to the 49ers. He could be a little bit of an upgrade at right tackle. Certainly immediately a hole filler at that guard spot. Armand Membo has shot up boards like you talk about like no other really in this draft from where he was back in August. So Armand Membo to the 49ers.
So Will Campbell not a top 5 pick
11,
anymore?
perfect selection at that point. And then you go to the Dallas Cowboys. Will it be a
There we go. I like Amari and Hampton.
Or maybe a wide receiver like Tenero McMillan T-Mac from Arizona? I went with Hampton. They went with Ezekiel Elliott. They went with Emmitt Smith back in the day. Why not go with Amari and Hampton? He can run it hard inside. He can bounce it outside. He can catch the ball and he'll block. And he will help out Dak Prescott and help that offense be balanced. That's a whole, despite what they brought in terms of free agency, this kid is special. And this is the only position in football where you can be as good as a rookie as you'll ever be in your National Football League career. So Amari and Hampton could be a Rookie of the Year candidate along with Gentry, because those running backs come in, and if they can block, they get on the field, and they usually play great.
All right, so this is a bit of an inflated spot as far as my rankings are concerned for Amari and Hampton. I've got him closer to, I think I'm 27th right now. And I'm not blaming, I like the player a lot. The Cowboys would be mismanaging assets right here, right now, if they did this. The Cowboys have so many needs that they must account for a team that, by the way, they don't want to rebuild. They want to win next year. They've got to find more wide receivers. They've got to find some help along the offensive line. The great Zach Martin just retired. They've got to fill some vacancies on the defensive side of the ball. Tank Lawrence is now the Seattle Seahawk, as I know everybody knows because they follow him and Micah Parsons on Twitter. They've got voids they've got to fill all over the roster, including running back. Too much depth in this class for the Cowboys to not prioritize harder positions to find than that running back spot at number 12.
And by the way, that's two running backs.
That's baloney.
Mel Kiper.
No, it's not.
We got a second baloney in the
on.
show?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
He was on a roll. Yeah, okay, I was good. Two balonies and two running backs in the top 12. We're on a roll here on
I'm
the
hungry,
Mel Kiper. 0.0 continues. Let's take a look at the next set of picks here, and let's start with the Dolphins at 13, Mel.
It's all about keeping two upright and healthy, Kevin. Will Campbell, left tackle with Jed Armstead. So he's the heir apparent to Armstead. He can play guard. You say, well, he's tall for guard. Well, Jonathan Ogden was 6'8", played guard his rookie year in the NFL when Tony Jones was the left tackle. Colston Loveland to the Colts will help Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. Not much separating Loveland from Tyler Warren. What do the Falcons need? An edge rusher. Mike Green improved from 9 tackles for loss to 23 and 4.5 sacks to 17 this year at Marshall. Speed, the power guy, did 28 reps at the combine. And Will Johnson wasn't able to finish out the season healthy. I think I got a guy 10 on the big board going to the Cardinals at pick number 16. Good value pick at that point.
Will Johnson at 16 seems kind of crazy after
a
lot of these mocks we've seen.
Drafting Michael Penix 8th overall. And I think for that reason alone, their backup quarterback, Kirk Cousins, wants to wait to see how this draft unfolds before he begins to survey the landscape and figure out where he might want to play next year if the Falcons are even willing to deal him, which they've towed the line and held a very difficult position right now. So, again, you're not going to see Kirk Cousins move, I don't believe, if he's moved at all, until after the draft unfolds and he can survey the teams that have specific quarterback needs. And then Atlanta would have to be willing to move off him, which so far it has insisted it is not willing to do. They picked up the $10 million roster bonus that becomes guaranteed next year this past weekend. They're willing, they say, to continue to sit on Kirk Cousins, but I think the timeline for the next move for Kirk Cousins could come at the conclusion of this upcoming draft after he sees how it unfolds, so he's not surprised this year the way he was last year.
All right, that's
I mean, I'm not sure he can.
In late April,
Yeah, we'll see.
Into May. Next
Year
up
2
for
off of the Achilles,
Bengals
maybe
at
he'll be better.
16 in our mock. Mel, after finally paying Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who do you have Cincy taking here?
Got to be defense, right?
You couldn't stop anybody. That's why you didn't make the playoffs. They got to go defense. And Shamar Stewart, a fielding Yates favorite, an LTPer, a looks the part guy, the ultimate guy in that area. 6'5", almost 270, ran 4.59, 40 vertical. Are you kidding me? But no sacks the last 7 games. Each of the last 3 years, only 1.5 sacks each of the last 3 years. Production lagging, but the talent and the potential is there. Then you look at Nick Emanwari going to Seattle. You get Shamar Stewart going to the Bengals as a guy at that point. You say, okay, we're going to roll the dice and take a shot at that talent. How about Emanwari? Look at talent. He is a freak. I think Mike McDonald will see a little bit of Kyle Hamilton, that big chest piece at safety that you can do so many things with. Nick Emanwari goes to the Seattle Seahawks, middle of the first round. I think for McDonald and that defense, it will be an upgrade and be really a good piece to really move around in that defense. And look what Kyle Hamilton has meant to the Baltimore Ravens. I think McDonald will see a little Hamilton and Nick Emanwari.
So a pair of defensive guys off the board there. Let's go picks 19 through 22. Mel, let's start with the Bucs.
Yeah, Jihad Campbell. You talk about a guy 6'3", 235 pounds, ran 4.52, had 117 tackles and 5 sacks, 7 or more tackles in 12 of 13 games, double-digit tackles in 5 games. He was dominant in the LSU game. You can move him around as well. There's T-Mac. Detroit McMillan going to the Denver Broncos. You're talking about a big receiver to throw it up to for Bo Nix. Pittsburgh Steelers look to Derek Harmon, defensive tackle. That's a neat area for them. Then the Chargers, weapons for Justin Herbert. Matthew Golden not only had a great year coming over in the transfer portal from the Houston Cougars, but he ran a surprising 4.29 40 at the Combine. That solidified Matthew Golden somewhere in that mid to late first round area. I think for the Chargers, it would become maybe a Mecca Ibuka from Ohio State or Matthew Golden. I went Golden because of that great speed on the heels of a very productive season for the Texas Longhorns.
All right, Shefty, so the Steelers go defensive tackle here in Mel's latest mock. Again, I mentioned it multiple times. We're still 37 days away from the draft. Maybe we know if somebody came out of a darkness retreat, is off a beach, and has a decision on his future here. What can you tell us about the Steelers quarterback situation as of right now? Because they brought back Mason Rudolph, but they need some depth.
Yeah, I think they're prepared to go into the season with Mason Rudolph as their starting quarterback if there are no more moves. Now, again, we'll see if somebody comes out of the darkness to decide to sign with Pittsburgh. We'll see if they decide to go back to the well with Russell Wilson. These are options the organization is considering. And I also think there's a belief around the league that they will potentially look at a quarterback in one of these very high rounds. I had one team suggest, right or wrong, that they could see Tyler Shuck sneaking into the first round, going to Pittsburgh at that slot. No idea whether that's accurate or not, but it's certainly something we'll be tracking. But for the time being, Mason Rudolph is QB1 in Pittsburgh, pending further moves, and I think everybody's expecting the Steelers to make another move or two at the quarterback position, whether that comes here in free agency or in the upcoming draft.
Maybe the Steelers pull a big trade and trade up
to that quarterback spot. I do think there's a chance Tyler Shuck makes it into round 1 as well. Here's the problem I would have with the Pittsburgh Steelers going into the season with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback, Kev. Think about how good this defense has been for what feels like forever, right? You've got inarguably one of the 5 best defensive players on the planet in T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward still playing an all-pro level into his early 30s. You've got guys on that side of the ball that are legitimate difference makers. You got to go to that side of the locker room and tell them, hey, we're doing the same thing or maybe even a downgrade compared to where we have been in recent years. They haven't won a playoff game in 5 straight trips to the postseason. They lost 5 straight games to end last year. The reason why? Not the defense. It was the offense. Yes, they traded for DK Metcalf, a move we all like, except for the fact who's throwing them the football. If I'm Pittsburgh, this is an organizational responsibility to your defense to aim for higher. It's great that they always have at least a winning record with Mike Tomlin as their head coach. What's much more important to Pittsburgh is winning Lombardi trophies. And with Mason Rudolph, they are not a Super Bowl contender.
And you could make a case over the last 6 years, Steelers fans are fed up with hearing that record, especially with no quarterback or no quarterback to build on and say that's the future ever since Ben Roethlisberger walked away. All right, with Sam Darnold out, let's continue to go through Mel's Mock 3.0. Mel, take us through picks 23 through 32. And let's start with the host of the draft in Green Bay.
Yeah, Jordan Love will love a Mecca Ibuka coming out to the Packers, the Lambeau. Mecca Ibuka, professional, consistent, reliable. He'll block as well. And you look at a guy like Walter Nolan at the end of the first round of the Eagles, makes up for the loss of Milton Williams. And who had a better year in the defensive secondary than Shanae Barron from Texas? Thought about him at Tampa Bay.
Some good players in that group. Kelvin Banks at 31.
Minnesota to the Vikings had him at pick number 24.
And Mel, when we come to the Vikings, let's not forget that last year they did use the 10th overall pick on J.J. McCarthy. They're still looking for another quarterback. We hear the Aaron Rodgers speculation, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this team is squarely committed to last year's 10th overall pick, J.J. McCarthy.
That would be a strong message that gets sent to their quarterback coming off that ACL. Make sure to check out Mel's